When I proposed the idea of growing yam in a bag, in a feed bag, at home in your backyard, it wasn't very popular with my family, coming from a line of people who are accustomed going in the forest, hunting, and usually they'd go in the forest, hunt, and sometimes, dig yam in the forest. So yam is something that you don't find just home domesticated like that. You find it somewhere in the back, in the bush, in some big forest. You're hunting and you find or fishing, and you find a yam vine, and then you follow it a few feet, and you get some yam, and you dig up some yam, and you put the heads back. Growing it in a bag at home sounded ridiculous, and to be honest, I didn't blame them for their skepticism. But speaking to my friends over there in Ghana, where they are accustomed growing in bags, because that's just the resources that they happen to have in a lot of places over there in Ghana, they assured me that you could grow yam in bags, and the results speak for themselves. I will put a link to last week's video where I grew these yam. I'm here in a bucket. Ugh. This is an example of the yam that I grew. Now, I didn't get a good picture of it last week, so there you go. This is one of the yam that I grew, and I'll put you all down here so you can see the yam that we grew in a bag. Now, this is nothing compared to what I could have gotten had these yam been able to stay for a longer period of time, or even have a bit more room to grow. But if you want to understand why I had to, dig the yam so early, have a look at last week's video and you'll understand why I had to do that. But basically, we are going to be talking today about growing yam in your backyard in a bag in a way that is 100% organic, super simple, easy, self-sustainable, and affordable. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, thank you all so much for joining in. This is the Trini Gardener channel, and I'm so glad you made it for this video, because as I said last week, you can grow as many greens as you want in your garden. You can grow as many tomatoes as you want. At some point, you're going to need something that's a bit heavier, that has starch, some dense carbohydrates that can give you the energy and fill you for a very, very long period of time. One of those things is yam. And today we're going to be talking about growing yam right at home in your backyard in a bag. I know that sounds crazy. Yam is something you normally get in the ground. You normally get it somewhere that is far away from your home, but you can have it. And it doesn't matter if you have a place that's completely concrete out, or you have a place that's tiled out, or once you have a space that you can put a feed bag, you can grow yam. And I'm going to show you how to do it super easy in this video. Let's get to it. Now, the first thing, of course, that you're going to need is a bag, right? So here I have a feed bag that I filled with some dirt, right? This is just an example. I'm probably going to have to, I would recommend that you fill this with a bit more dirt than I have inside here. To be honest, this could work. It's just that the less soil you give it, then the less space you have to actually have yam grow out and give you a bigger harvest. But that doesn't mean that this couldn't work. It's just that I think that, this is just what I have here, and the place is wet, so I don't want to actually go and dig up in the soil right now. So this is the amount that I have inside here. If you were to probably put like 50% more inside here, then you would be set to go to grow your own yam. If you don't have any more than that, then just simply use this. What you could use for soil is if you have any piece of abandoned land anywhere near to you, right, that's not too clay. So what do I mean by clay? Clay soil is soil that when you crumple it together, you make a fist with it, you can't break it apart. It almost becomes sort of like a kind of rubber, right? That's clay soil. Clay soil holds on to a bit too much of moisture, and one of the reasons for that is that the particles in clay, they're so tiny, it doesn't allow for air pockets and spaces to go in. So that's not going to be the best for your yam. It could potentially grow there, but I'd recommend that you try to find a place where the soil that you're getting, it's kind of crumbly, right? So you make a fist with it, and then you can crumble the soil afterwards. That's the kind of soil that you're looking for. Don't do anything too fancy or expensive to grow yam. It's a local crop, and this is one of the reasons why I always tell you to grow local things. They're just going to grow in Trinidad. There's a reason why we don't find wild strawberries in beaches. Nobody goes down to Manzanilla and finds wild strawberries. You don't go in the forest and find blueberries in Trinidad, because that's just not our local crops. Not saying you can't grow them, but grow the things that for us are our strengths. Things like yam, you're going to find it. If you fish long enough in some of these different dams and in the forests and that kind of thing, you go hunting or whatever, you're going to find yam, because it's just designed to grow in our kind of culture. That's why the native Amerindians who were here long before we were, that's why so much of their food and other things, even medicine or whatnot, depending on where they were dependent on root crops like yam, like cassava, like yam, you know. So we're growing something that is local for us, so we don't need to go extra in terms of what we're doing to take care of the yam. To be honest, yam is something that I would consider a plant and forget kind of crop. Now we're gonna go from the soil to the actual plant itself. What are you using to plant yam? Are you using a seed, a plant, a seedling? So this is what happens. All right, so you see that I have harvested this yam, right? Okay, good. So in this yam, if you look at it, there's going to be a part to the top here that you'd call like the head, right? And then to this end as well, right? Now we're doing something that is pretty much propagation, where we are going to be, you could cut off the tip over here, right? And then you can put this entire piece of yam into some soil and it will spring out like a vine, and that's what you're going to be using to plant your yam. If you are using yam that you probably had home, or you bought in the supermarket or in the market, more than likely if it's local yam, it's going to be able to grow from the head. So normally, like when you cutting on using yam, the both ends, they're going to be a bit harder, so you cut them out. It's called your head, and then you can plant them, and the rest is the softer bit that you could potentially use. Not saying that you can't, but just the head is really what we're accustomed using. I'll give you an example of a yam head. I have one just behind here. This is an old yam head, right? It doesn't really look too much like yam, right? But it is a yam head, and it's very, very hard. So this is not something you'd eat. You could use this potentially to plant yam, but we're not going to do either of these two options. These are just the options for those of you who are, you're probably completely urban and you maybe don't have access to a compost bin or compost pile like I'm going to show you. So that's what you could use to plant your own yam. Another thing you can do is even take the yam head, put it in some water, just like I told you to do with the sweet potatoes. You can look at my sweet potato growing guide right here, and sweet potato growing guide for bags, feed bags as well, and you'll be able to see that sweet potatoes, just like yam, put it in just about a half an inch of water, leave it in there for a few days. It's going to spring roots. Take that, plant it into the ground, plant it into your bag, and you're going to be able to grow your sweet potato, and in this case, yam. Now, all of the information that I'm giving you right now for bags is pretty much applicable to what you're going to be doing in the ground. So if you don't want to plant in the bag and you have access to ground or even like a raised bed, then apply the same knowledge and just do the exact same thing, just changing the scenario itself. But what we're going to be doing for our yam seedling or our yam vine, in my compost pile, I generally, because I always forget to turn and get busy, that kind of thing, I have some yam that you see some carrots that I throw away, right? In the compost pile to break down. I have some yam here, and these are yam vines. All right, this is what a yam vine would look like. So if I were to pull on this, oh, it's all coming from the same head. It looks like. There we go. You see this? This is just a little piece of yam. Okay, so this is just a little sliver of yam. So you see how very little that you need, and this is propagation right here, which is that this piece of yam is probably something that we cooked with and that we just kind of threw away into the compost pile, and it started to produce the roots, which you can see coming down here. So the roots grow underneath, and then it sends out this vine, right? And then this is the leaf that is attached to it, and these leaves are usually fairly disconnected from the roots itself, to the extent that this vine could get as much as a few 100 feet long and be somewhere entirely different, could be 100 feet away from where the actual roots are. Now you don't get the yam from the roots, you get the yam from the tuber. All right, so what the tuber is that the tuber is where you store excess energy. So what happens is that the vine will go up, right? It'll go up and climb onto, like in this case here, you will see it's climbing onto my zabuka tree, right? Which is not in itself dangerous to the zabuka tree if you grow it out of season when the zabuka is not producing zabuka. It's more focusing on root development at that point in time. So you're going to see the leaves and whatnot kind of not doing as well, right? It can now be starting to spring new growth. So what will happen is that the vine goes up, goes straight up to the sky, collects sunlight, and then we have, say it with me, photosynthesis. Say it again. Photosynthesis, great. And Photosynthesis is what happens here. That's why this is green. This has chlorophyll. Chlorophyll gives the leaf that ability to then convert sunlight into energy, and from there we get energy going down into the plant. That energy goes into the roots to help support the plant because it's a plant that wants to survive, and then the roots now will start to have tubers that are going to form just around here, and it's going to almost connect to the head itself, though it will always look like it's separate from the plant itself. And the tubers is basically just excess energy that the plant did not need, and it's stored just there. That's the same principle as well for sweet potatoes. Okay, so all that we're going to do is just clear out a little area in the bag, and it does not matter if your bag is on soil, if your bag is on concrete, it really doesn't matter. You just take the head, make a bit of room for it, and just rest the head down inside there. Just mold it up so it doesn't fall over, and there you go. Simple as that. Your yam is planted. Right, so a few things. Sunlight. You don't have to worry very much about sunlight with your yam. You do need sunlight. The difference is that with yam, as opposed to other kind of vegetables that you're going to have in your garden, is that yam is going to search out the sunlight, meaning that the vine is going to try to find a way to get somewhere up and over. The yam has this sort of genetic kind of knowledge, right? We all have that. Basically, it's how we kind of connect with our ancestors through DNA, right? Or I think RNA, or there's some kind of fancy kind of biological terms for it. It's that you share DNA, or you share kind of, I don't know, like memories more or less through your body with people that came before you, people in your ancestral line, right? That's sort of how we're all connected as, you know, humans, and in this case, yam. Basically, yam as a native plant is designed, or it has this sort of knowledge that it needs to grow up above a canopy to be able to get access to sunlight. That's actually really cool, really interesting, that the yam itself knows that where it's planted generally is not going to have sunlight. So if you look at yam, if you study yam that grows in the forest, the yam is generally in a place that has, you know, a lot of big trees. So what the yam will do is yam will actually find a way, vine up all of those trees, and it's very good at this. The yam has sort of perfected this technique over, I don't know, however many millions of years. Yam has been around in different shapes and forms, and the yam is basically going to twine and twirl its way up trees, get to the top of the canopy or somewhere where it can get sunlight, and gather that sunlight for you. So it's not that you don't have to give it sunlight. What you should give it is you should give it a place or some sort of trellising system, which is as basic as a zabuka tree or something like bamboo. We recently had some floods around here, and the floods brought down some bamboo, so I've been using bamboo as a trellis just around for things that can grow on their own, because you don't have to work to grow your yam on a bamboo or any kind of trellis. The yam is going to figure it out. You just put the bamboo or whatever old sticks that you have somewhere nearby to the yam, and the yam is going to figure it out. The yam is just programmed. The DNA in the yam is just telling it, okay, the yam has to do this to get sunlight. So sunlight is important, but it isn't as important. So what you could do is put your yam anywhere that's convenient for you in your garden, and then give it some way to get up, to grow up. Now you could potentially plant your yam on the ground and then just sort of have it sprawl all over the ground itself. That is fine, that's not impossible to do. But if you're doing that and it's sprawling on the ground, then you should make it so that the ground itself is getting sunlight, because if it doesn't have any structure to then grow up on, then it's going to be at a disadvantage because it's not getting sunlight itself. We usually talk about watering the vegetable. Right now, this yam that I grew here in this bag, I watered it very little. Right now we are in the rainy season, so we've been having rain. The yam itself, however, is not very picky. It can go without moisture for a fair period of time. Think about yam in the forest. Nobody's going to water that. It's just going to get water whenever water does come by. It's a very hardy crop. It's not very sort of like babyish, where you have to baby it and water it twice a day or once a day. I water this yam probably once every week to 2 weeks sometimes, depending on what the weather look like. And to be honest, that's what I do with yam. I don't stress out at all about it. Plant and almost kind of forget the yam itself. Now, if you're thinking about fertilizing your yam, I'm not going to tell you no to not fertilize your yam. I mean, of course, especially if you're using an organic fertilizer, then by all means, you're going to improve the soil. In any case, what I would say is that it's not very necessary with yam. Yam is something that's just very good at growing on its own, especially if you've given it some kind of soil that it has the ability to put its roots through, so nothing too clayey and something that fairly crumbles. That way the yam is just going to be happy with the home, and the root itself is going to have a symbiotic relationship with different organisms that are in the soil itself. That's going to help provide the nutrients for your garden. That's how we operate in an organic garden, and I'm hoping that in your gardens you're applying some of the concepts that we have talked about in my videos. The worm castings, if possible, right? The animal manure is something that I would put on the yam itself. It's not super, I wouldn't say it's not super necessary. It's something that definitely will help. It's just if you're a complete beginner and you just want to grow something, grow yam. Get some dirt, put it in a bag, take the yam head, stick it on it. You're going to have yam. Now, in terms of the period of time, wow, almost forgot about that. In terms of the period of time that you're going to want to be harvesting your yam, yam is ready to harvest by 5 months. All right, it's a bit longer than sweet potatoes. By 5 months, your yam is supposed to be okay enough to harvest. I would say if you're able to, and especially if you're growing in bags, you should be able to, because you shouldn't be worrying too much about rot. Because what happens is that people who have to grow in the earth, just in the ground, they're going to have to monitor the weather. If it's too wet, then the yam could start to get like rotting, right? And different kind of fungus could start to develop around the roots because it's just moist and waterlogged. So in that case, definitely you want to harvest your yam by 5 months or a little bit over, that kind of thing. But if your soil is in a bag and I'm expecting it to be able to drain out fairly well, then it's not going to be waterlogged, and you could push that 5 months to 6, 7, 8 months. People have left yam that I know of who've had it in not bags in the ground, but it wasn't somewhere that would be sort of moist or very, very waterlogged, for up to a year, and even 13 months, 14 months. And by the time you're finished, you're talking about yam that's massive, massive, massive. Now, that's only if you have that patience to do, which a lot of us, we always lack. And to be honest, I'm the first one to say that, because I sometimes just really want to see what I did. But if you're able to, you can go for that. But again, by 5 months, you can't harvest your yam. If it's longer than that, if it stays dry, you can get bigger yam. But again, if the place itself is waterlogged, then you should harvest it earlier rather than later to avoid root rot happening or fungal issues. And there you go. There you have it. In about 5, 6 months, you get yourself some tomatoes, homegrown, hopefully. You get yourself some saltfish. You get yourself some whatever else, and you're going to be harvesting some nice homegrown organic yam that you grew yourself at home in a bag in a way that people probably thought you would never be able to. You did it, and you will be able to tell them, listen, this is the way to go. If you're unable to have access to land, there's no reason why you can't grow yam and have your own crop or your own food that can feed your family, keep them from being hungry in a way that's so easy, so affordable, so cheap, so organic. Now remember, if you know somebody who would also be interested in growing their own homegrown yam or any other kind of food, feel free to share this video and also the channel with them. And let's help them out in these times where we need as much help with producing and being as self-sustainable as possible. Remember that you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and you can also tag us on any of those platforms, because we're just so happy to see what you all are up to in your gardens, what you're doing with your families, how you're connecting with yourself, with nature, with your families as well. Remember, as always, this has been Dylan from the Trini Gardener channel, reminding you to get up and get growing. Take care.